So picture this. It's March of 2026, and the world is watching two completely separate, really alarming stories unfold. In one corner, you've got a brutal war in the Middle East, and in the other, a massive energy crisis that's threatening to paralyze Central Europe. They seem like they're worlds apart, but they weren't. We're going to dig into how these two events got so dangerously tangled up.
So here's the big question, right? How on earth did a full-scale ground war in Lebanon and a pipeline dispute between Slovakia and Ukraine somehow merge into a single global threat? That's the mystery we're going to unravel today.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the two crises, side by side. Then we'll find that one single spark that lit the fuse. And after that, we'll trace how the dominoes fell one by one, until two separate emergencies cascaded into one huge mess.
Right, let's set the stage. The month is March 2026, and the world is, well, it's on a knife's edge. You've got two major crises flaring up at the exact same time in two different parts of the world. So, on one side of the globe, in Lebanon, you have this devastating war between Israel and Hezbollah, and it's creating a massive humanitarian crisis. Then, all the way over in Europe, Slovakia declares a national emergency because its main oil supply has just been completely shut off. I mean, look at how separate these things look. Different places, different players, different problems. Or so it seemed. Now, to really get how these are connected, we have to rewind the clock just a few days before all this chaos erupted, because it turns out there was one single event that was the spark for the entire chain reaction.
And that spark was this. On February 28, 2026, the U.S. and Israel launched a joint military campaign against Iran, and this included the assassination of its supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Now, this wasn't just some isolated strike. This one act sent massive shockwaves across the entire geopolitical landscape.
And this timeline, wow, it just lays out how incredibly fast everything went south. The situation between Israel and Hezbollah was already super tense, right? But just look at the timeline. February 28th, the strike on Iran. The very next day, March 1st, Hezbollah, which is Iran's key ally in the region, vows revenge. And by March 2nd, they make good on that promise. They launch attacks. And just like that, we have a full-blown war. It's a direct and frankly terrifyingly fast escalation.
And this brings us to our first domino, the war in Lebanon. This is where the consequences of that strike on Iran became tragically, horribly clear.
The human cost was immediate and just staggering. By the end of March, more than 1,000 people had been killed in Lebanon. This isn't just a number, you know. This was a lethal, on-the-ground reality for so many people.
And it wasn't just the death toll. A massive humanitarian crisis just exploded. Over 1 million people were forced from their homes. Now, to put that into perspective, that's almost 20% of the entire country's population. Just imagine that. 1 in 5 people in your country suddenly homeless in a matter of weeks.
And here's the crazy part. The thing you've got to understand. This wasn't even a war the Lebanese state wanted. The government in Beirut immediately condemned Hezbollah's actions, calling them totally unauthorized. They even ordered the arrests of the people responsible. But it didn't matter. Hezbollah, acting for its sponsor Iran, had dragged the entire nation into a conflict completely against its will.
Okay, so while the Middle East is on fire, let's jump thousands of miles away. Because at the exact same time, a second domino was just starting to topple over in Europe.
This part of the story is all about something called the Druzhba pipeline. And for countries like Slovakia, this isn't just one pipeline among many. It's their economic lifeline. Their whole national refinery is set up for Russian crude oil, making this single pipeline absolutely critical for them.
So you can imagine what happened when that oil just stopped flowing. Slovakia's reaction was swift and it was furious. They didn't just complain, they hit back hard at Ukraine, who they blamed for the whole thing. First, they cut off diesel exports to Ukraine. Then, they threatened to block Ukraine's entry into the EU. And finally, they cut off emergency electricity supplies, turning a political fight into a real problem for everyday people. From Slovakia's point of view, this was a deliberate attack. Their Prime Minister, Robert Fico, accused Ukraine of political blackmail, basically saying the pipeline was fine and Ukraine was just playing political games.
But, of course, that is not how Ukraine saw it at all. They fired right back, calling Slovakia's response unacceptable energy blackmail. Their argument was simple. Hey, don't blame us. The pipeline was damaged by Russian drone strikes. Your ultimatums should be going to the Kremlin, not to us.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got a hot war raging in the Middle East, and this diplomatic firestorm brewing in Europe. Two separate stories, right?
Well, this is the part where they smash right into each other.
This table really maps it all out. You see the separate inciting incidents, the US/Israel strike in one theater, the Russian drone strike in the other. But here it is. The key to the whole puzzle is right there at the bottom, the connection. That Iran war created this global atmosphere of just intense tension. Normally, a damaged pipeline is a technical problem, you get engineers, you talk, you fix it, but not this time. In this supercharged, high-strung environment, there was zero political space for cooperation. The trust was gone, and a technical problem blew up into a massive international crisis.
And just like that, two seemingly separate stories became one giant tangled mess, and it showed everyone just how fragile, how dangerously interconnected the whole global system had become.
So by the end of March, what did the world look like? Well, it wasn't pretty. The brutal war in Lebanon was still grinding on. Europe was diplomatically broken, with Slovakia and Hungary now blocking critical EU aid to Ukraine. Ukraine itself was in an impossible position, fighting a war while facing an energy shortage. And hanging over all of it, the original spark, the tension with Iran, was still at a boiling point.
And the threat of things getting even worse was hanging over everything. Iran issued this chilling warning through its state media: any more attacks on its energy sites, and it would irreversibly destroy infrastructure across the Middle East. The very first domino was now threatening to knock the entire board over.
And that leaves us with one final, really unsettling question. When a war in one region can amplify an energy dispute in another, it reveals a dangerous truth about our world. In a system this connected, this fragile, the real question is, where does the next domino fall?